and welcome back to iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on social media at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. In the Proptech Hot Seat today is Andrew Farrell, returning guest and of course founder of BlockAngel. Andrew, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on your show, Carol. Thanks. Good to be back here, talking to you again.
I'm delighted. And of course, the last time you were on the show, you actually got to come out to the studio in Dundrum and meet face to face. But of course, we're still recording remotely. So, it's a good opportunity to remind ourselves how far we've come, but maybe not altogether out the woods in terms of our COVID restrictions. And that's something that we're seeing play out in the industry at the moment. We're just starting to learn the impacts of COVID on maybe some of the real estate operations that we had that rushed in to embrace technology during COVID and now are just finding their feet with them. So, Andrew, let's go back a step and remind people, what is BlockAngel and what do you and the BlockAngel team do?
Yeah, so very valid point, and a point that has affected our particular industry as well, which is residential block management. So, we saw a lot of people move to online AGMs, people relying more on digital platforms to communicate, and it's really helped our success, the COVID period. So yeah, just for your listeners, so BlockAngels, it's a platform for multi-unit residential property management, and what we do is we are solving problems around service charge collection and sinking fund crisis. So the hope is that we're going to be solving problems around this, increasing more service charge collection, coming up with practical solutions for the sinking fund crisis, and ensuring the future viability of residential communities. In residential block management, I think the big issue is that the public generally don't really understand the value of their service charges, right? And they don't really understand, I suppose, the value that the property management agent brings as well in the relationship. They're kind of misrepresented really in the eyes of the public.
I'm really glad that you phrased it like that, people are, I think in Ireland, we're not as familiar with apartment living as we ought to be. And similarly with block management and service charges, you're right. There's certainly, maybe there has been kind of a mass poor communication of why service charges are necessary, and actually why, when done well, they benefit the apartment owners. But you've actually kind of got the key word there, that it's the service charges value, and people are used to paying for something, and if they see the value, then they're happy enough to pay for it. And maybe that's something that hasn't been done well in Ireland. But how is that changing?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it hasn't been done well, not only in Ireland, but in the UK and in the US as well. There's a number of problems, really. There's a number of issues why, this problem exists. The homeowners, generally half of homeowners are reluctant to pay their service charges because, for those exact reasons you just said, they don't understand what they're paying for and they don't believe they get value for money with their service charges. And the problem is so bad, like now, that roughly about 20% of people, are not paying their service charges, and 60% of people delay paying their service charges. So look, there's lots of reasons around that. Obviously, there's the issue of people not understanding what they're paying for. There's issues around actual friction in payment and arranging payment. There's a lack of understanding around sinking funds and what they're made up of and the importance of that. And then on the actual management agent side, they've lots of problems in trying to face this down as well. I mean, like, up to this point, they've really had a lack of technology and solutions around CRM, accounting, and payment solutions as well. to suit their industry. Either solutions have been, enterprise level and cost prohibitive, or they've been sort of very, basic and analog and requiring a lot of admin to operate the system. So, like if we just take into account, it's such a labor intensive business, right? It's a real people intensive business. It's a real admin heavy business, right? So block managers now, they're responsible for coming up with the budget, procuring that budget, site inspections and surveys. But then they also have to run a management accounting service, a debt collection service, recovery, client accounting. So it's really heavy, both from the admin side and the people side.
Andrew, Andrew, it strikes me as you're going through there. I mean, first of all, they're really stark figures. 50% reluctant to pay, 60% late paying, 20% not paying at all. So straight away, I'm thinking, actually, how much waste is there in the system? That's kind of the first part. But the second thing, when you describe such an analog approach to how payments are being collected, and yet Ireland has become such a hotbed of fintech innovation, is there any, like, what's the innovation that's coming into the real estate sector from an operational point of view?
Yeah, so coming from that analog approach, right? It's the red letters approach to debt collection, right? So you get a letter in the door, goes in the to-do pile. You get a second letter, goes in the to-do pile. Then the red letters start coming in: interest, referral to debt collection, and then the debt collector you just get a letter from them, and then you're like, oh well, I better pay now, because things are getting serious, right? So it's our approach to processing payments and debt management is to engage with people, right? So what we do is we provide a platform that provides transparency around the financial and operational management of the development, right? So people understand where their service charges are going in the first instance, right? So what am I paying for? So we can communicate that through the BlockAngel community portal, which the management agent, creates content around the budget. And then in relation to the actual payment side of things, so, coming from that analog space, it's, send in a check, do a bank transfer when you get a chance to do it, or, make a part payment, whatever it might be. So we introduce a payment gateway that's frictionless. So from the email that you receive with your bill, pay now button brought through a payment gateway where you can select different payment methods and different payment arrangements. If you want to do direct debit setup, bank transfer, card payment, we facilitate that. And that takes out a lot of the admin work as well for the agents. So, there's KYC requirements, there's PCI card data security requirements. There's even central bank regulations as well if you're running client accounts. So we can take away a lot of that with our platform, with the payment gateway. And the streamlining of that payment process has been proven to increase service charge collection by 10%. So if we look at the figure of, say, 20% of people not paying their service charges, when we increase that collection by 20%, or by 10%, I beg your pardon, we're effectively reducing that overall service charge arrear balance by, nearly 50% over time. So,
Andrew,
that.
sorry, Andrew, is it ever communicated within a block that actually those who are slow paying are actually adding to the expense of collecting and therefore diminishing the value of the service charge being collected, but also those who aren't paying are actually driving up the service charge for all of the other residents? Like, is this something
Yeah.
that's well understood?
Not really, no. I mean, obviously you've got a board of directors that's usually made up of residents in a development, and they would be, fully aware of the service charge arrears and the financial health of the development. But for, the average person, homeowner who has a property in a managed estate, they wouldn't be aware of those kinds of figures. There is a trouble, at the same time, you don't want to communicate that level of detail to a large audience, because there's a self-feeding situation there where, if a lot of people aren't paying, then more people see that other people aren't paying, and then they hold off paying, and then it spirals into this
Um,
huge problem, right?
when
So
you talk about that, I'm thinking of Irish water charges.
yeah.
That there was almost a group think around non-paying. But in Ireland, do we have any idea of the scale of the problem? Do we know what level of service charge is going collected every year?
Yeah, roughly about 60 million euros a year goes uncollected in service
Wow.
charges in Ireland. And that's the same figure across in the UK is, I think it's $2.5 billion or pounds, and then in the US it's 20-25 billion dollars, something like that. So it's huge amounts of money that go uncollected, and it does ultimately affect the cash flows of these estates. Essential works get put off, and the quality of the built environment in the estate starts to decline when people aren't paying their fees. And as you said, everybody has to pay more because of those people who don't pay. So, what BlockAngel does is, reduces those barriers to payment, engages people to understand about their service charges, how their money is being spent. And then we also take all of the pain out of actually arranging payment, and improve those cash flows for the estate. Um, so
Andrew, sorry,
yeah.
twice you've referred to sinking fund crisis.
Mm,
Do we
yeah.
have a sinking fund crisis?
Yes. Yeah, we do. It's not very well publicized, and I don't know why, but roughly 80% of management companies of these managed estates around Ireland and the UK, actually the UK is a similar kind of level as us in terms of the scale of the problem, are underfunded. So roughly, as a rule of thumb, you should be putting away sort of 15 to 25% of your annual budget in a sinking fund, to pay for big capital items that happen every couple of years, right? So roof replacements, lift replacements, fire safety, um, um, and it could be other big projects that are coming down the line as well, that are facing developments, such as the net zero carbon future that we're all going into, right? So um, I think over the next 10 years it's going to be become a real issue, because there will be more demands on buildings to decarbonize, and it's going to cost money, and the owners are going to have to pay pretty much the lion's share of all of that. I don't think the grants will be there to cover as much as everybody hopes that they will, and it is going to become a bigger issue as time goes on. The big problem is that like with everything, if you don't see something happening today in front of your eyes, you don't put value in it, right? So people, when they pay their service charges, they think grass cutting, cleaning, window cleaning, that kind of thing. They don't think about roof replacement, lift replacement, all these big capital items that need to be replaced
But
in these developments. So
Andrew, what's the consequence of this? How is it going to impact on apartment owners then?
well, we've seen a lot of it, like over the last few years, with things like the all of the fire defects in buildings, right? So all the fireworks that needed to happen in apartment buildings, and people being faced with huge bills, 15, 20, 50,000 euros, or more in some cases. And that's not isolated to Ireland. It's happened in the UK with the cladding crisis, and it's happened in the US as well, as a lot of their stock ages and buildings have been underinvested in. And then when it gets to that stage, I mean, the insurance companies, walk away from the buildings. You have an asset then that's uninsured. So then, if you're selling that asset, it's going to be greatly depreciated, because the next purchaser of that asset is not going to be able to get bank financing. They'll have to they'll have to be a cash buyer. Carol, so the way that our customers use our system is that, like, I'll just give you an example. So one of the developments on BlockAngel right now, it's probably one of the biggest housing estates in the country, and they've got fire safety issues in that development. And there's a lot of works that are required to rectify these problems. So the agents are using BlockAngel to share documentation, provide updates on works, issue payment requests then to the homeowners, and provide full transparency on the surveys, the works, the costs, updating all the owners throughout that process. But I think, the biggest point I wanted to make today, I think, on your show was to really say that consumers are spending, it's costing them basically a 20% premium on their service charges. The fact that people don't pay their service charges. And the issue with sinking fund crisis is going to be really bad in the future unless it's addressed today and people are made aware of the requirements for sinking funds. So it's on everybody to try and improve service charge collection. And that's what we do at BlockAngel.
Andrew, that's a really compelling message to leave with people. I think that if there was a greater awareness around the fact that every responsible apartment owner in Ireland is effectively paying this premium, as you've said, of 20% to compensate for the cost of non-paying owners in their same block, non-paying neighbours. So by tackling this, if you can reduce the service charges for everybody while maintaining and increasing the value, then that's where we need to get to. That, and maybe the education and awareness around the importance of this sinking fund. And that can be difficult when people feel under pressure financially today. It can feel difficult to plan for what may go wrong in the future. However, we know that in terms of the sinking fund, it's not about what may go wrong. These are buildings need to be maintained, and that elements of a building have a certain lifespan. So I think maybe there needs to be much greater awareness around that at a national level. But it's an interesting conversation that you're starting, and well done to yourself and the BlockAngel team for taking that on. And that's it from us this week. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iPropertyRadio or by emailing hello@iPropertyRadio.com. My thanks to the Hear Me Roar production team and to Luke Delaney on sound for Dublin South FM. Until next time, thank you for listening.